Close.
Red Team, we're showing your position less than 100 meters from the signal. But there's no data suggesting any ancient civ development in that area.
I think they're up to something they just don't want us to know about.
If you use the word expansion pack nowadays, I think most gamers would look at you as if you just farted in their face, but not too long ago, expansion packs were like DLC, with actual content. Basically, the way it used to work was that you'd buy a whole game with nothing held back, then if that game was successful, later on you'd get an expansion pack to go along with it. Often these expansion packs weren't made by the same development team, but instead by people who were fans of the original game. A good example of this is when Gearbox Software worked on Opposing Force for Half-Life, which many people, myself included, consider to be one of the best expansion packs for any single FPS game. I can remember this whole thing kind of dying out and slowly being replaced with DLC around the time when Elder Scrolls Oblivion brought out an armoured outfit for horses, but the expansion packs still had a bit of life left in them. One of the last true expansion packs I can ever remember playing was Resurrection of Evil for Doom 3, developed by a group called Nerve Software, made up of people who formerly worked for Rogue Entertainment, the same people who developed the awesome Strife and doubled around with expansion packs for Quake and Quake 2. So on that basis, you'd expect that these guys know what the hell they're doing, which they do. And Resurrection of Evil was released for Microsoft Windows and the Xbox in 2005. So the story picks up after the conclusion of Doom 3, after a 2-year hiatus where the UAC picks up a signal from one of their satellites and sends a team to investigate, led by a scientist named Elizabeth McNeil, voiced by Jennifer Hale, who I actually met in real life too. She's awesome. Anyway, soon after, the protagonist, again another Marine, activates some kind of artifact which awakens the forces of hell, and you end up fighting your way through the UAC base to find and destroy that old, bald asshole Dr. Petrukha, the antagonist from Doom 3. McNeil has the honour of being the second female character to be seen in the Doom 3 series. The only other one I can recall was a woman you interact with for all of 5 seconds before she gets her spine ripped out as she turns into a lost soul. There's a few cinematics speckled throughout the game which are really just a means of keeping the plot moving and updating you for your next objective. You can collect PDAs along the way which provide access codes to ammunition lockers and shed a bit of light on the game's backstory. But this isn't plot heavy in any sense, and it's still an old school shooter at heart, taking anywhere from 4 to 6 hours to complete on a first time playthrough. Instead of the Soul Cube, now the player has something called the Artifact, which is used to slow down time during combat using human souls as ammunition. After our brain-dead protagonist wakes up the Hell Forces, Petrukha sends 3 demons after him, and each of these serve as mini boss fights, which eventually upgrade the artifact after they're each defeated. So at first the artifact only slows down time, but will eventually allow you to do increased damage, before finally granting you invulnerability whilst it's active. These boss fights will probably take you all of 10 seconds to figure out, and not too long after that, they'll be easily defeated. Using the artifact kind of becomes essential because the enemy count in this game is a lot higher than it was in Doom 3, and the environment seemed to be a lot more claustrophobic, not really allowing you all that room to maneuver. The design and layout is very similar to that in Doom 3 though, obviously because it's set in the same UAC facility, so you're not going to see anything all that new or unique. There is a new enemy type though in the form of a Volga, which is basically a different looking imp that throws white fireballs and moves around a lot closer to the ground. These things will spawn infrequently, blocking the path forward and often forcing you to literally just kinda stand there waiting for them to spawn in if you've activated the artifact at that time. I guess they felt they had to include some new enemy types, but none of them are really all that much of a game changer. The Volga is ugly too, but not in the sense of its appearance, more in terms of its design. It's just not appealing and it's really poorly thrown together. It looks like the bad guy from that Suburban Commando movie. You'll be mostly fighting these things or the zombie marines, which form probably 60% of the combat in the expansion pack. You can't really fault the weapon lineup in Doom 3, I mean it's one designed around practicality and every weapon has a purpose. The pistol, the shotgun, the machine gun, chain gun, rocket launcher, plasma gun and BFG all work for better or worse against certain enemy types. The acquisition of these weapons is a little bit on the slow side though. You don't get the plasma gun until the last third of the expansion pack, so you can feel under-equipped initially. The other big addition in Resurrection of Evil is the addition of 2 new weapons, the Super Shotgun and the Grabber, which is the game's answer to Half-Life 2's Gravity Gun. Much like the gravity gun, the grabber is able to pick up most physics items like crates and barrels and let these items be thrown around, preferably at enemies, right into their faces. However, the way it differs to Half-Life 2 is you can also grab an enemy's projectile and throw it right back at them if you're quick enough. It's a neat idea, but it falls flat on its ass for two main reasons. Firstly, you can only hold onto an object for like 4 or 5 seconds before the grabber overheats, either dropping the item or in the case of explosive barrels causing them to explode. And secondly, the vision around the crosshair when you've grabbed something is greatly distorted, making it difficult to see what the hell you're aiming at. You can get the hang of it the more you play, but it's not really thought out all that well and really just seems to be thrown in there to compete with the gravity gun. This brings me on to the Super Shotgun, something most Doom 2 fans are no doubt familiar with, and as you'd expect, it's a double-barreled version of the normal shotgun that does increased damage at the expense of reload time. Again, like the new enemies, not all that much of a game changer, and there is a shortage on shotgun ammo I found as well, which ultimately meant I didn't use it as much as I could have. But it's still nice to be thrown in as another option to switch to during gunfights. Now, what I perceive as one of the expansion pack's biggest problems is the visuals. I mean, obviously the game runs on the Doom 3 engine, which all things considered still gets the job done. Most of the textures are crisp and detailed, and it looks great running at a smooth 60 frames per second, but the issue is that the game is dark, like really dark. Not in the sense of it being atmospheric, but as in it just hinders your vision because you can't see a damn thing. There seems to be enough light sources, it's just that none of them are as bright as they should be. There were segments when I had to draw the curtains and sit closer to the monitor to make out what the hell was going on. One of these is during a section where you're fighting alongside one of those overpowered little sentry robots that dimly lights the path ahead of you as it moves around, and I'm not kidding when I say that I couldn't see what was going on at all. Doom 3 was a dark game to be sure, but never to the point where it affected your ability to actually play the game. The darkness in this is just a handicap. And this is personified the most during a part in the game where you're moving through some waste tunnels with a helmet on that obscures your vision. To make it even worse, you're contending with a rapidly dwindling air supply, and you can't even see the air tanks that are supposed to refresh your air supply, let alone pick them up. You know, obviously these expansion packs weren't created with the same budget or schedules as the original games, so they're never going to be as good, and it's true that Resurrection of Evil does lack a fair bit in that regard. It's often a horror game without any horror, and it lacks a lot of scripted sequences that made Doom 3 so memorable. Is it bad though? Well, to that I would say no, Sonny Jim. Sure, it's not quite as polished as Doom 3, and in certain segments it feels like you're suffering from glaucoma. But this is still a great example of an old school shooter from that point in time when these old school shooters were really on the way out of the industry. On the higher difficulties, it's a genuinely challenging game that doesn't hold back, and the amount of ammunition and health items ensures you've got a decent challenge from start to finish. It's not the best expansion pack ever made, but it still makes most modern day DLC look like absolute garbage.